This is my completely stackable modular system of sorts. I would like to call it a workbench system, but it can go way beyond that, right? This could be a stackable system for 3D printers, computers. This could be a stackable system for a kitchen. Basically anything that you could come up with, we can create that within this system. And this has really come about because this morning I woke up and I just did not know where to put my drill press. I've been considering making a mini fabrication desk setup style situation for the Bosch tools, so my normal woodworking tools essentially, and I've been stuck. I just don't know where in relation to the other tools I would place that thing. And then I came to the conclusion of why not make it modular. And that might sound a little bit strange because I mean it's a drill press, you can unplug it from the power and just move it someplace else. But what I'm talking about is integrating it into a workbench where it's in a fixed position and it's always ready to go and active. Currently, usually it's just on the floor because I don't have enough setups in the space to put it on something permanently. Designed some different stuff before I came up with this, but the first iterations were just not there. This is the first one where I'm truly excited about the concept because it's entirely rotatable. Essentially, you can rotate it in whatever direction and put it down. Now, this was somewhat inspired by multiple projects that we've done in the past, and especially like the Gridfinity-esque storage system that we came up with. This is something completely on another level. I want this to be hyper efficient in terms of material use. That means that these cubes are 60 by 60 centimeters. That is the sheet material that I can carry on the e-bike from the hardware store to here. And so that is also the material that we're able to put in the laser cutter and actually cut out. There's certain components which are 3D printed. Not entirely sure yet if this is the route that we're going to be taking. Probably going to go to the hardware store tomorrow and actually do some prototyping before we commit to it. I want to make sure that it works properly. And that is somewhat also why I'm making this video. This is the concepting phase. I only make a video like this for special projects, as I call them, like the mini fabrication desk setup and the compute cart. And this is going to be something really sick. So let's have a look. So currently we have a couple of different configurations. I started off with this top segment. This is where we could place a drill press on top of, for example, or some kind of other tool. And over here we have 3D printed components. I'll go into that a little later on. Now, the way that we actually stack these systems is through these connectors, I suppose you could call them. Now this connector, I was actually prototyping it with power plugs in there. So it could be like a power module or a power node. I don't know entirely about the naming and that kind of stuff. But what we could also do is use 3D printed components to actually connect these segments, right? So if I select this unit here and drop it down, you can see that it falls down on these 3D printed little corner pieces, and it has holes in there as well. So we could potentially drill a hole in the multiplex and then drill a screw into that as well. But the other method, which I think is a little bit more solid, is these connectors in the middle. And so those will also allow us to add somewhat like infrastructure to the entire system. Now the nice thing about these connector systems is that they can also be expanded upon. So down here we have a pretty long one. This one is 120 centimeters. If I had a really large laser cutter, which I one day did, but I no longer have that one, we could also laser cut an entire segment like this, and then it would essentially be a setup. Something I would also like to experiment with is expanding upon it in this direction, so that we could have, you know, a cube with a drawer pointing that way and a cube with the drill press over here, for example. So we have multiple layers. I still need to figure that one out though. So those are the types of things that I still need to get done in this design process. As I go through it, I find more and more things that make it more expandable, and that's important to do in the beginning phases rather than figuring that stuff out later down the line. You can see down here that we have a larger cube. This one is one of the bigger ones. I think it's 90 centimeters, and we could go all the way up to 120 centimeters. And what we can then also do is, because these cubes are basically expansions of each other, right? So this top one over here is 15 centimeters. This one is basically twice the size of that one. This one's 30 centimeters. And this one is a combination of those two. So it's the 30 centimeter one with the 15 centimeter one. And then we do that again and again until we get to 120 centimeters or potentially even more. And that is then also how we're able to stack two systems together to gain the same height. So you can see that these are 2 blocks and this one's 1 block, but they end up being the same height over there. And this one has a drawer in there, but I'm not entirely sure if that's the use case for it. Now this is something that's also pretty interesting because we're using the same connecting mechanism. These are essentially the small plates that we get from the 15 centimeter one, and we can place them on these larger units, right? And then we have some 3D printed components over there to fill up the gaps, because otherwise what would happen is we'd be laser cutting the sheet over here, and if we want a gap in it, then we'd get rid of all of this material. Now that inside material can be reused, but I find that oftentimes we don't reuse it, and that's kind of a waste. Now in the beginning phases I actually considered using L brackets to put everything together because I don't like gluing stuff. Gluing stuff takes a lot of time, makes a lot of mess. Eventually I did end up with the idea of gluing it together, but we could always place some L brackets in there and make the bolt holes for it so that we can bolt everything together. I don't think that's the right direction though, because it will decrease the structural integrity quite a bit, and because this is a stackable system, it just needs to be very solid, right? So we have different heights of the 60 by 60 centimeter modules, but of course we can also make modules that are 30 centimeters by 60 centimeters, or even 30 by 30, and those will also just snap into place like this one. So you can see that this one is pretty small and it just fits right in there, and of course we would have to have another small unit right next to it to account for it. And then next to those we have a flat module, and these are nice for actually placing tools on and that kind of stuff, and making the entire setup flat on the top. So we could cover this entire area with these, or we could use the 15 centimeter module that we have up there, of course. Now the reason I didn't use the 15 centimeter module is because then I feel like I need to fill up that space with something, and you know, in theory this is an okay solution because of course we have those connector systems in between there, which results in a lot of room. So if there was a lot of cables and stuff, we could manage those by placing them inside of this thing. It's so cool. I can't wait to get started with this. I hope you enjoyed these videos. I hope you enjoy this build project. See you in the next episode.